wouldn't say this is revolutionary from UCLA's coach Chip Kelly, but he's got a lot that he's saying that in a perfect world is correct. Let me repeat some of it for you. And I know a lot of y'all will say, "Oh man, he's dead on right." He is right, but there's a lot way more in the way he says he says we should all be independent in football. That is never going to happen as it relates to in the next, certainly not 10 years, if not 30 years. He says we should all be independent. You can have a 64 team conference that's Power 5, and you can have a 64. I don't care about the Group of 5. They don't matter to me. He said we separate and play each other. He says that's a lot of games, and there's a lot of people in TV world that would love for that. He's right about that. He said you can have the West Coast teams, and every year we play 7 games against the West Coast teams. Then we play in the East, so we go play Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia. And then the next year you play in the South. You still play your 7 teams. You play a 7-game schedule. You can play against 4 other division opponents. You can always play one Mountain West team every year and still keep the rivalries going. He's talking about a world where you have NFL-like scheduling. And honestly, I don't think it's a horrible idea. Right now, you have, you have 4 major conferences. The Pac-12, unfortunately, does not exist anymore. So you've got the SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC. And you still have everyone spread out. I mean, the schools have moved conferences, but they've not moved. I mean, there's nothing Midwest about Oregon, Washington, SC, or UCLA. That's not a thing, right? They're completely West Coast schools. If you go visit those schools, you know what I'm talking about. But, there will come – people are lamenting the transfer portal. I don't know why that bothers people. I mean, guys have left schools forever. And they're bothered by NIL, which you don't see on the field. What you do see on the field are teams playing in different parts of the world. The part of college football that's going to be very different in the near future is Stanford and Cal playing in the ACC. It's going to be Arizona playing a conference game at West Virginia. It's going to be, Georgia. It's dumb enough that Georgia played Missouri, but now they're going to include Texas and Oklahoma. And honestly, I mean, the name brand of Texas and Oklahoma is great. Everything else that goes along with it, man, you don't want any part of that travel. It's not close. It's not that hard to get to Texas, get to Austin or Norman. It's hard to get to Columbia, Missouri. It's not easy. So all of these things, that's not necessarily getting things better. But if you were to go kind of shrink this thing in a little bit, it would be challenging though, because you can't give weight out west when they don't deserve it. And right now, there's really no comparing the area really on I-85. I mean, you look at the last, since 2015, the national championship has gone to these schools. 15, Alabama. 16, Clemson. 17, Alabama. 18, Clemson. And then in 19, LSU. 20, Alabama. 21, Georgia. 22, Georgia. And very well could be Clemson in 23. Alabama 23. All those teams are on the, not necessarily I-85 corridor, but you can draw a very quick line from Clemson to Tuscaloosa. It's not that far. And Clemson's fallen off. I get that. Michigan's done well and all this stuff. But, it's not the same. The last 4 national championships have gone Georgia, Bama, LSU. Well, they all play in the same league. 2 of them play in the same division. So I think what Chip Kelly is saying is it sounds nice. It is nice, but it's just not. This sport is dominated by this corner of the country. And this might be the year where that corner of the country does not win the national championship. But I'll tell you, it's still going to get dominated by this part of the country. It just will. I'm running out of time to send these to y'all. I've got a double Dawgs signed by Stetson Bennett. I show it every single time. Oops. and I've got some Dawgstructions that are signed by Kelee Ringo. If you want them by Christmas, you need to order them today. Um, I'm going to run out of these. I've had 3 people, I think two people order in the last 24 hours, and I've got more of these, but it's the Christmas thing I'm worried about. So order these. The link is down below. Make sure you're checking that out. I remember very clearly sitting in Hartsville, South Carolina, which none of y'all know where that is, which is fine, where I went to school in college, and we would divvy up the schools. It doesn't make sense for, at the time we would think in these high-minded notions. Why would you have Texas in the Big 12 and Nebraska was a power at the time? And, we put Florida State and, all of them in the SEC. We didn't have Texas in there, The powers that be have spoken, though, man. Like, you're not going to have these cartels are not going to give up power. It's too far gone, and it's about money. So what? Everything's about money. Well, I just did a sponsorship plug, right? I mean, you think I can just go to Norman, Oklahoma, or in this case, Austin? You think I can free my way to run this business? Of course, it's about money. Don't get your feelings so hurt about it's about money. I mean, like, y'all, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to put it, that's what it is. Like, I don't feel sorry for people that have more money than I do. I mean, whatever, good for them. But, like, not, if I work and I get paid, what's wrong with that? Well, these television networks that have formed cartels with the leagues, they're just participating in commerce. This is just capitalism. That's it. And everybody loves capitalism until it's against them, I guess, or until it does something they don't want. This is not going to get regulated. Why would it? These are independent, organizations. The SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12. These are not, these are tax-exempt organizations. The schools are tax-exempt organizations. These are, it's like churches. It's like a church saying a church can't put their gospel or their message on television. No, that's not how it's going to work. That's not how it works. So I would be nice with what Chip Kelly's saying. It would be nice to have order. But honestly, we have order in the NCAA basketball tournament, and people don't stop complaining about that. It's constantly being discussed and how bad, someone got jobbed or this, that, or the other, but at least they all get to play. I personally would not want to see, Georgia ever go away from playing the Gators, Tech, or Auburn. I think after that, you don't play Tennessee, you don't play South Carolina. It'd be too bad not to play, Tennessee and South Carolina. Georgia's played them for almost 30 years. And that would be too bad to go away from that. They've played Vanderbilt since 1967. They've played Tennessee. They played Clemson from I don't even know when, until consecutive years until I think 87 every single year. And then they don't play Clemson anymore every year. They don't play the Rebels they played Ole Miss from the 60s until 2002. So there are going to be things that go away, but there need to be certain things that don't. And when you're Georgia and you're Alabama, when you're Georgia and Bama, and I guess to some degree Michigan, there are, like, Michigan's rivals. Ohio State is their big one, right? But they also have Michigan State. They have Penn State they have to deal with. I don't think they're really rivals, and then you have Paul Bunyan's axe and all these things. That might be a different game. I get confused with the stupidity of the Midwestern trophies. We have names down here at least. But, when I asked the Georgia people about Tech, there's never a year where those two teams won't play. I mean, that's just not going to happen. COVID was the exception to that rule, or to that. It's not a law, thank God, but it's the exception to that rule. If you're not playing those 3 games, those rivalry games, and you're Georgia, are you Georgia anymore? if you're just playing, let's say the top 16 teams broke away, like we saw in um, professional soccer in Europe try to have happen with Liverpool and Barcelona and Real Madrid, etc. Manchester City. That I think you're really not being yourself then, and I think that that's a different situation. Then that is only about money, and it would have to be a decision that they would make. But I don't think you'd want to trade in what you are, and I think that that's the part. If the color red is for sale, if you were to say, oh well, Georgia's got to wear blue now, and Georgia agrees to it, then they're not Georgia anymore. So we're not at that point, and I don't think we're close to that. But there are, you can fill in the fall however you want. And for me, moving Auburn from November was, you know, that's a hard one to deal with to some degree. But what Chip Kelly is talking about is a utopian fantasy, and I don't mean that in a dismissive way. It is a utopian fantasy. It is something that will not happen. But that doesn't mean there's not merit to what he's suggesting. The problem is it just won't happen because in many ways it should not happen. But it has been a very difficult thing for those West Coast schools to see their league get blown up. And it was not UCLA's fault. I will say that. But they did go along for the ride. But everything that these programs and schools do matters. I personally, as a huge fan of the Pac-12, would love to see it exist in the future. That will never happen anymore. The Big Eight, I don't think it was a great league, but it's never coming back. And the Metro Conference with South Carolina and Florida State and Louisville and all these, that's never going to happen again. The SEC is powerful because of its member institutions. Georgia, through the years, it's been this power group. It's been Bama, Georgia, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, LSU. I don't think I repeated anyone. That group has been the group. And in the future now, that group will include certainly Texas and probably Oklahoma. That group could include possibly Texas A&M, although but that's what's made the SEC powerful. And that's what's allowed, and the risk that the league took in 92 and the risk that the league took in 96, 95, going into the 96. None of this has been by, and I should complete my thought, 95 going into 96 with the television contract. None of this has been by accident. And the people, the shareholders who now have decades-long buy-in for that, I mean, Kirby Smart never played in an SEC that didn't have divisions. Kirby Smart only for a year, I think. Only for a year did Kirby Smart play in games that were not under a CBS contract with the SEC. This is the SEC and has been the SEC for a long time. And to go back to something before that or to divvy it up in different ways, it won't happen. And it wouldn't be right to happen either. It's a utopian idea. It's great. It's just not going to happen, and it probably shouldn't.